So whether you think Uber is the devil or the angel brought forward to advance our technology and regulated industries, there's probably no better example to sort of challenge our notion of public policy than come up with the Uber of public policy. Now, this has become very common to compare your startup to Uber because of its great big valuation, but I'm going to take a bold step and see if we can update public policy by using some of the factors that have made Uber and its imitators successful at disrupting. So there's 4 factors that we saw in the most successful of these Uber of their industries. And the first one was this idea around using tech at the core. So when I think of public policy today, I think about the mass of regulations, sometimes conflicting, sometimes really difficult to decipher. And so we've got new techniques in AI and machine learning and professions like data scientists that never existed before. What if we could apply that type of tech at the core of public policy making? The second idea is this idea of using an exponential inventory. So you've seen this ability in the so-called sharing economy to go deep into things that get not very well used, whether it's that high-end bicycle you never use or it's that car that sits in your driveway 95% of the time. So what about all of the policies around the world in different municipalities and different cities that we could be able to draw from and understand and not wait for some trade mission around the world, but be constantly scanning the horizon for new great ideas that we can use to put in place when technologies challenge us in our current mode. The third idea is this point around dynamic pricing. So in Uber's parlance, it's the surge pricing. And we are starting to see some changes come about, like self-driving vehicles, like DNA mapping, all of these things that challenge our notion about how do we regulate this technology at this pace? And so what if there could be a surge of policymaking? Could we bring in people who might be sort of sitting on the sidelines who could be at a premium rate helping us think through these difficult problems? And if you were to pair those people with the technology, would that give us sort of an advanced way of being able to challenge this rather than waiting not just months, but we're looking at years where we've looked at the arrival of policies to even regulate things like ride hailing in our country. And then the fourth and final one is probably what I think is most important, and it's this idea of the Uber of companies are building trust so quickly and sometimes losing trust so quickly. But the ones who are doing it well understand how to use a community to provide ratings back and forth. This is two-way feedback with consequences. And it's become so trusted by the general public that it's now replacing things that the regulators had typically done. Whether you were a taxi commission or if you were the ones deciding which home could offer a extra bedroom for rent. All of these things are now arbitrated by a community that offers ratings. But what we're often challenged with is this notion of how are those ratings fairly determined? Are we able to understand if there's any implicit bias in there? Is there a validation of a person actually stayed in that place or that they used that service? That's the type of role that a regulator could play in concert with the community in order to advance this notion. This is a good idea now because it prompts this idea of, we are not just living in a society of we're going to do the same thing that we did decades ago. We are starting to see changes in very fundamental parts of our lives. Some people say that transportation, for instance, will change us more in the next 5 years than in the last 75 years. So how do we adapt our approach quite quickly by looking outside of the public sector to different models where we might be able to change our approach? In my particular case of research, I had looked at 500 companies claiming to be the Uber of their industry, and many of them disappeared, but many of them challenged the status quo and provided a great value to both customers and suppliers. And so, however we may feel about these companies or these disruptions, the truth is that they are here now, and we're going to need to recognize it and do something about it. So there's a few factors that we saw in the most successful on the companies on the private sector side. So we need to make this happen, we need to look at what are the combinations of things to make this successful. And so one is talent. who are the talented people that we want to draw into public policy making in the future? If this is going to be such an important part of our lives, we're going to need to make this one of the most important, attractive professions out there. And how do we do that? Is it a combination of impact, of financial remuneration, or really just collaborating with the right people and the right technology? The other part is this idea of how can I scale my impact? If I am able to find a great solution for one part of the world, can I look at ways that I can adapt it and adjust it and maybe make it expand to Toronto or New York City or Vancouver while still keeping kind of the local situation or the country's particular characteristics in mind?